Hello, BookTube. On this channel, over the years, we have done a great many read-alongs. The traditional BookTube thing where we pick a book and we break it down by segments and we read them for a certain time and then I bloviate about them. And also we have done a few, not as many as I would like, read-alouds, is what I call them, where in addition to commenting on the book section by section, I read you the whole thing. Trying to behave myself by reading you just the words, but always failing and interpolating all sorts of Steve commentary along the way. We've had a lot of fun doing Steve read-alouds, a lot of them, a lot of fun. And of course I'm limited with a read-aloud, unlike with a read-along, because with a read-aloud, I'm hampered by copyright. There's nothing I'd like better than to pick, probably I can think of 10 books, history and nonfiction and fiction, that I would like nothing better than to read out loud and comment on as I did it, but I'd be sued, or I could be sued, because they're still under copyright. So we have to go to older stuff than that to do read-alouds, but that still leaves a whole universe. And I have been dilatory here. I've been a little bit slow off the mark in getting all of this stuff going. I was slow off the mark coming back to BookTube, so that's my excuse. I want to start read-alouds again. Read-alongs too, but read-alouds especially. So I've got my eye on March, to start for March. I know one of the things that I want to do. It's certainly by popular demand, something that you all want to do a read-aloud of. But I thought we'd work our way up to that. There are plenty of other things I want to do. So for March, starting in March, we're going to do a read-aloud of Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. This is one of his last major novels. It was written in the early 1880s, and he died in the early 1880s. In fact, as this was coming out, as it was being serialized, part of it was being serialized posthumously. Trollope lived the dream of every hardworking hack writer by having his work literally coming out week by week, even though he died in the middle of it. And it deals with something that we are familiar with from another read-aloud. We did a read-aloud on this channel of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the main action of which is haunted and motivated entirely by the concept of entail. The Longbourn estate, where the Bennet girls live, is entailed away from them. When Mr. Bennet dies, the estate, meaning the big house, the farm, the servants, the furniture, everything, goes to the nearest male cousin, the nearest male member of the family. Mr. Bennet only had daughters. So the Jane and Elizabeth Bennet, Jane Bennet, Mr. Bennet's oldest daughter, a thoroughly worthy young woman, an intelligent, beautiful young woman, well thought of in the neighborhood, no scandals attached to her name, a firm head on her shoulders, cannot inherit Longbourn. It's going to a horrible cousin, which means that the horrible cousin could say, you all have to move out, and the family would have no choice in the matter. We're told all throughout Pride and Prejudice that the family will have no choice in the matter. This book deals with that. It deals with that concept, the concept of entail. And as I have always complained, as I've taught Pride and Prejudice, and as I did a buddy read on Pride and Prejudice, and then I did a read aloud on Pride and Prejudice, and the whole time that I've done that, I've complained that the Bennet family's just giving up too easily. Entails are made to be broken. And it's entirely possible that Mr. Bennet or a good lawyer could have gotten around the entail for a Longbourn. I don't know if it's just me, but every time I reread Pride and Prejudice, as happy as I am that, 3 of the daughters are married and 2 of them happily married, I always think, well, what about Longbourn? I don't want Mr. Collins to get Longbourn. No matter how happily the daughters are married, I don't want him to get Longbourn. So that subject, the subject of an entail, hovers over this book. This is one of Trollope's most legal novels. Don't let that fool you, though. There's a lot in here. He thought up the spine of this book, the legalistic spine of this book, the whole idea of someone fighting an entail. And then, because he was Anthony Trollope, he then thought up a whole bunch of other stuff to fill out the novel, a whole bunch of great stuff. Great stuff. Incredibly touching stuff. Incredibly surprising stuff. There's some very funny stuff. Another wonderful Trollope woman. Trollope's novels, of course, are filled with women, but there's a small group of Trollope women that are wonderful forces of nature, and there's one of those in this book. In other words, believe it or not, even though it has a fairly boring title, and even though it looks like a standard gray flannel Victorian triple-decker, this is actually a really entertaining novel. Dark in some parts, but a really entertaining novel. So we're going to read this. I'm going to read this to you starting in March. And we'll see how long that takes. How many chapters does this thing have? I have to know that off the top of my head. How many chapters do we have here? Are you going to tell me? This edition going to tell me? Well, just about 50 something. This looks like 64 chapters. So that's 2 months if we do it every day, give or take. Well, all I want is to do, this video is just to prepare you. You don't actually need to prepare at all. You don't need the book. I'll just read it to you. But if you want to do a little advanced reading, if you want to familiarize yourself with it, if you want to read along with me, then you have a month, basically a month, to find a copy of this book. It's not hard to find a copy of this book, I might point out, because it's free on Project Gutenberg for your Kindle. There's a small group of people connected with my channel, a small group of people who watch my channel and just adamantly refuse to read ebooks. I don't really understand that, but again, as I say to that stubborn group all the time, today's February 9th. We'll be starting on March the 1st, so that's 3 weeks. If you want me to find you a copy of this book, a print and paper copy of this book, and send it to you, if you live in the lower 48 of the United States and you want a copy and you know where you live, you actually know your address. Maybe your parents have pinned it to your coat so you don't get it to me wrong, so you don't give me your address wrong, and I send it to the wrong place and I'm just out the postage. If, in other words, you can follow the basic requirements of me mailing you something, then we have time for me to find you a copy and send it to you. I'd be happy to do that. So that's what we're going to do. That's our next read aloud for this channel, is Mr. Scarborough's Family. It is a hoot of a book. There's, like I said, there are some dark things in it. There's also the dark thing that's not in it, but that hovers over it, which is knowing that its author died shortly after writing it. Certainly shortly after it being published. It was published serialized when he was dying and then dead. So it's a little bit melancholy to know that Anthony Trollope never actually held this book in his hand. But considering how many books he wrote, it was bound to happen. So anyway, that's our read aloud. Our next read aloud for this channel is Mr. Scarborough's Family, a very, very late Trollope. The last thing he did that was not trivial. There are a lot of other books from 1881, 1882, even 1883, but they're not. Some of them have Trollopian moments, but Mr. Scarborough's Family is a successful novel. I believe this is the last successful novel that he wrote. So I'll wrap it up. Let me know what you think, and I hope you join me on the 1st of March. Thank you, BookTube.